My name is Tibor Spitz. I live in Kingston, New York, in the United States.
And tell me all the places you have lived in your life.
I started in a small, we call it town because it was a county seat, Dolny Kubin, in very north, almost at the Polish border of Slovakia. The country was called Czechoslovakia. I was born in 1929, and I had an older brother and younger sister. I was raised in that small town of 2,000 people, went to elementary school with other kids, and with other kids which were not Jewish, because there were not enough Jews there to make a cheder with a Jewish school. My father was a cantor, a chazan with all rabbinical duties, and my mother was a teacher. And she received her diploma in an Ursuline monastery, Catholic monastery, because it was the only institution in Austrian-Hungarian monarchy before Czechoslovakia was created, which had a license to teach, to educate teachers. Later on it was changed.
And tell me the other places you have lived in your life after this village.
After it, I went to, then we survived the Holocaust. Most important was a forest, 200 days, 7 months in a forest under snow and ice. We didn't know how long it would take. We dug a hole, built a shelter, spent a very long time there, survived somehow against all odds, and moved to another town called Liptovsky Mikuláš. After finishing high school, I went to Prague. I had to go to study chemistry, and a few years later, after completing that education, I moved to Sudetenland, where I completed my education, received a PhD by experimenting in glass industry. I was the first one in the country who made his PhD in industrial relationships, and not only in the lab or some kind of a university or research environment. Then I worked in glass industry as a researcher, scientist, inventor. I had a lot of patents, a lot of publications. I gave paper on International Glass Congress. It was a communist country, which means that they sent me there with 2 bodyguards, which were not guarding me from the outside dangers, but they guarded me from escaping, so that they brought me safely back to Czechoslovakia. And I was representing great Soviet or simply regime science. I knew that the regime would end one day, and I believed that I'm doing something good, because glass was very useful for for consumers, flat glass particularly, and hollow glass, we called it, bottles and tumblers and any glass, fibers, whatever. And I was a very good specialist in glass industry, manufacturing as well as science, because I knew that I would have to escape one day. And I kept my left hand in science and right hand in industry. I could be useful in both sides of that field, which are not too many fields which you can embrace totally from one side to the other one. After completing 20 years later, they sent me to Cuba after spending a lot of times abroad, but only exclusively in East European countries, where I was troubleshooting mostly glass factories or exchanging scientific discoveries with Soviet scientists in Moscow and in glass factories abroad, in their country, including the areas where now the fighting goes on. I spent a few days in Kharkiv and Kiev and so on. After being sent to Cuba and fixing their glass industry, which I was asked to do, the assignment, in the middle of the assignment, I had to return to Czechoslovakia to report to my bosses, and I found out that the country is occupied by 500,000 Soviet soldiers, which came to teach our government how to really handle a proper political system, which drifted into something called communism with a human face, and it was no such thing, and it had to be corrected. And it was corrected. I didn't like it, and by flying back to Cuba, the airplane refueled in Canada, and we escaped to Canada. 3 months later, after learning the language, because the Canadians have 2 official languages, English and French, I got a job in Montreal, spending 2 years in Montreal. Then we moved to Toronto, where the company I worked for built a glass factory, bottles, making bottles, containers. Then I returned. They sent me back to Montreal, where it was the largest factory, where I was able to increase production without any investment, just by speeding up glass melting. When French people took over the government and started threatening English people, which happened to me, I was not English, but it was an incident associated with a nationality. I became very uncomfortable, and we moved to Philadelphia, West Virginia, New Jersey, and finally ended up in Kingston, which was not anymore glass manufacturing. After 30 years, I spent 14 years developing magnetic recording heads, which were a basic instrument or component of hard drives, which didn't exist until then. Which means that I very often, when I give detailed lectures, apologizing to people that staring, that when their children or grandchildren are staring at some monitors, I feel very guilty because I contributed a lot to that unfortunate or fortunate, whatever view you have. But it has improved, it has changed the whole outlook of humankind, and it was as important as inventing steam engine or electricity, and before metals, so that I felt really that I came here following a advice: you have to leave this world better than you left. When you have to leave this world a better place than when you arrived, when you were born. And this I felt I fulfilled to a great extent. And this was my work. And after retiring at the age of 68, which was 24 years ago, I became a full-time artist. I was already painting, exhibiting. I even made it in a book of an art historian from Rutgers University. His book was marketed using my paintings, of 44 paintings, and this is how I found out that he used my painting and my biography, comparing me with all kinds of giant giants of like Siegel, giants of American art, and that book eventually was published in 1997 when I was much younger. There were other books where my art appeared. There were many published articles, magazines, and clips, movies. And when I became a professional artist at the age of 68 and so on, then that my art appeared in really many trailers, films, and books. And it was in 2015, Canadian Slovaks sent a team from Toronto to make a movie about my life. It's a documentary movie, 42 minutes long, available online on YouTube under the title of SPITZ space DVD space 01, and many other ones. If somebody is interested to go online and search Tibor Spitz, finds many clips and many trailers.
So obviously a big experience was during the war and living in the forest. Can you tell me about that?
I was 12 years old. I was 10 years old when I was kicked out of school because what they called a race. But it was no such thing as a race. Nobody could distinguish us on the streets because we were dressed the same way, we spoke the same way, we looked the same way. And it was practically religion. It was an artificial reason how to find the way to rob us, and eventually it became an armed robbery because killing us was also involved. They killed even babies, little children, so that they could not claim the property later on. Which means that it was an armed robbery under the title of race, which was not a race because they picked up an ethnic group or a religious group. When I was 12, they did it this way. They told us, prepare yourself, carry only a little bag in your hand, what you can carry, and report to a railroad, and we will take you to a labor camp somewhere abroad, and we will let you have your own government and your own management, and who can work will work and feed older people, children and female and so on. Which means that it was a president of the Slovak fascist republic at that time was a Catholic priest. Nobody would believe that a Catholic priest would send to death a whole entire family, children, babies, females, old people. Which means that people somehow trusted that they would end up in some kind of a labor camp. And we were told after the war we will decide what to do with you, but first of all we have to win the war. And most people obeyed. Before that, before 1942, before the deportations, they were telling us Jews cannot wear fur coats. We had to, whatever was fur, and we lived in very high mountains, very cold, we were not allowed to keep warm. Which means that we had to bring to police station anything with fur. Then musical instruments and radios and anything associated with writing. Then naturally money and property was confiscated first. Jewelry, we had to bring all the jewelry to the police station. And after being totally robbed, then came and we started starving and being very upset and hungry and cold. Then they told us a solution is to bring you to your own labor camp and you will live there happily ever after. Naturally, it turned out to be that people who arrived to those so-called labor camps where few people were selected out to become laborers, but the rest, majority, more than 90%, were asked to undress and to be disinfected after a long trip, and instead of showers, poisonous gas killed them, and prisoners burned their bodies in a huge battery of Siemens-built crematoria. And in 2 hours, 1,000 to 2,000 people could be turned into ashes. And people only figured it out in the last 15-20 minutes that it's their last moment of life. It was very well thought out. A lot of German psychologists made PhDs by working out the system of deceiving people, of making rules which would end up by people saying, oh, I can live without musical instrument, I can live without books, I can live without this and that. And it was thought out to a way that deceived people really walked into those cattle cars expecting to end up in a labor camp, and including the uncertainty. They didn't know the locations, they didn't know the destination, but still it was some kind of a normal way. We were not deported immediately because there were 24 kids in that little town. When they kicked us out of schools, public schools, they asked the Jewish community, you have to produce your own school. And my mother became a school teacher in that school. There were 24 children in that small town, 2,000 people, and about 270 Jews. Then another reason why we were set aside was that my mother and my father was a Jewish reverend, Jewish cantor, in charge of burials, which means that if a Jew died, nobody else would bury him, which means that they kept a clergyman, Jewish clergyman, in charge of burying, and told us, you will be the last one. You will move you after the Jews will not live here anymore. You will, at the end of the year, you would be the last one to be deported. And this gave us some time, but this was also a broken promise, and because we found out, and I have a book published that day, and I have even a document available showing that we were on the list to be deported several times in between, regardless of the promises they gave us. But when we saw cattle cars on the railroad station and we saw no cattle, we assumed that it's made for people. We always escaped. We hid for a few days, and they never found us at home. And this way we saved ourselves from being shipped into the death camp. And when really our turn came to be shipped, but it happened later when, after a little uprising, Slovak national uprising, the name of it, was crushed by German army, and German army took over Slovakia. We knew that any compromise or zigzagging or simply hiding would not work anymore, and we built a shelter in the forest, believing that the front line would move very quickly, because the Soviet army, at that time it was called the Red Army, was already in Poland and Ukraine, and we believed that they might, they were about 100, 150 miles away, or kilometers even less distance. And they stopped there and prepare themselves rearmed and so on. And we had to survive 200 days, 7 months under snow and ice in a forest covered with snow and ice, very high in the mountains, which was much colder and longer. In April 4, the whole Slovakia was already surrounded by Soviet army, and German army ran away. And same, my wife Noemi, she was 22 months old, hiding, was liberated the same day as we were liberated in northern Slovakia, but not before. In the forest where we were hiding, there were 5 battles fought between the Red Army soldiers and German army and their all kinds of collaborators, Romanians, Hungarians, whatever. And we had, when we came out of that shelter, it was, we saw craters, like a few yards wide, made of cannon shells by cannon explosions and cartridges all over. And if they fell on our shelter, we would have been gone. Or if we appeared alive, either army would have shot us because they were. Which means that to survive those 200 days needed a real miracle, because there were thousands of opportunities for us to be killed. And since those deportations, if I included into it, there were about 3 years we had to survive somehow, hiding, zigzagging, pretending, and then hiding under the ground, living like forest animals live, but they were very better prepared than us. And we made it alive because we were also robbed in the forest, lined up to be shot, and made it somehow miraculously. I escaped, and came back to bury them, and they were alive, standing in underwear in snow in February, and we had to survive two more months, which means that unimaginable starvation, suffering, conditions, mental anguish, and we made it alive. And after the war, we returned back to the small village where we started, and then to the place where we came from.
So you built a structure in the ground? You built tell me about what you...
May I show you the picture?
Yeah. Do you want to fix that?
Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
We cut out of the side of a hill, like a triangle, put 4, like we found tree trunks, like falling trees, put some stones on the bottom. Crisscrossed it, and then build a structure with a hole in the middle, and left an opening to walk in and out. And it looked, this is a little bit better way of showing it. This yellow part was cut out of the hillside, and it was the opposite hillside, and a little bit of tiny stream of water was in between those two slopes in the valley. And then these were those beams. We didn't have any nails or ropes or anything, which means that we just cut it. I had a little hatchet. Here it is showing our tools. A little hatchet, our bare hands, and a soldier running away left his trench shovel behind, and I picked it up. And this is how then the shelter looked, better shown here. This was like a top. Here was a wooden structure. This was a roof, a hollow stump through which we were breathing, and in and out, we can crawl in and out. It was just on all four from the shelter, and 6 people were inside. And a patrols, SS men and local soldiers, and some naturally people who would love to benefit from taking us dead or alive to the Gestapo, were searching for us as well. And they were local partisans, and they didn't like us either. Eventually, the group of parachuted partisans into this area from Soviet Union.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Let me fix my camera. Who were the 6 people in the shelter? Who were the 6 people?
Oh, so 6 people were my parents 2, my siblings 2, my grandfather, father of my father, and I. My grandfather lived in Trnava, Slovakia, which was very south, many hours by train to us. In 1942, he went somewhere away, and when he came home, he found out on his door sealed, his front door sealed, saying this person living here was deported. Then he tried to get, besides my father, he had 6 more children who lived also in the town, and he went to visit them, and on each door was the same sign, sealed door saying by police, do not enter, this is a property of, I don't know, a country, or government or whatever, and it is, whatever is inside of the apartment is determined to be sold in auction, and it's forbidden to enter, and so on. Which means that he was totally confused. Jews were not allowed to travel by train, that's why he removed his yellow star, which he had to wear since 1941. And he just visited us and said, here I am, what do you suggest? And we said, okay, Steve is us. And then when we went to the forest, he went with us. He was 70. After the war, he came back. He survived, and his 7 children, 7 out of 8 children vanished, didn't come back. He was waiting for a few months, and then he was old, over 70. Went to the hospital and never came home. He just died of something probably associated also with his desperation or disappointment or whatever it's called, because losing 7 children was just terrible.
How did you survive in the structure, in the shelter?
We believed that we would stay there for a very short time, few weeks max. It was a situation outside was this way. It was a Slovak uprising. In 1944, it was a Slovak uprising. Few army generals or soldiers made an uprising, and everybody celebrated. It looks like Soviet army, Red Army at the time it's called, would take cross the border and would liberate the area because it was in a partisan's hands. It didn't happen. Germans army decided to take over the entire Slovakia, and they put huge posters after they came usually by trucks. In a truck was a machine gun which was shooting ahead, and in the truck was a mortar, shooting mortar shells. Naturally, where it fell down, it was a fire explosion, and it scared a lot of people. It was a like weapon of war, and they took over the country. A lot of people, civilians, ran away from main roads because they took mostly main roads. And after escaping to those smaller villages or off-the-road areas, we just removed our stars, yellow stars, which were showing that we were Jewish. We took our backpacks, always ready to grab, and we, for years, didn't remove our shoes, just loosened the laces. And we joined them, and then came to a village in the mountains, and we claimed to be bombed out refugees, and it was like a war refugees. There were a lot of people there who were regular civilians. Naturally, a few weeks later, Germans posed both big posters saying, you know, like people don't worry, everything is consolidated, the life is normal, nobody's going to bother you, come home. And most people, not most, practically everybody came back. Naturally, political people who knew that Gestapo might kill them, and Jews were hesitating, but even Jews came back. While we were in that village for a few weeks, we were building our shelter because we knew it is no deal with Gestapo, which was secret police, and SS men who were killing Jews wherever they found them. And we knew that we cannot return home. There were even posters in Dolny Kubin, where I came from, saying, Jews, if you have survived so far, don't worry, nothing will happen to you. You have survived so far, we will not bother you. Naturally, who returned was put into those cattle cars and taken to, at that time, already German concentration camps, because Soviets were in Poland already. Which means that when people return home to their town, we vanished from the village, took our backpacks into opposite direction. Nobody, we didn't have money. We couldn't get any help from anybody to help us to build a shelter. Nobody knew where the shelter was located. There were mountains all over the area. There were some spaces in between which were little fields, but very steep hills, and mostly for grazing sheep, goats, and few cows. But it was not really anything except those very dense forests, and extremely, and so the whole industry was just lumber and pulling those big trees down the icy slopes. And this is how how we ended up in a ravine, on the side of a ravine, where even for a horse was very difficult in wintertime, particularly when it was slippery. Even horses couldn't very well walk there. And they came on horsebacks many times shouting, help, help, and who looked up was shot. Which means that we counted with all those deceits and with all those things numerous times. We avoided being discovered or killed just by a razor blade size distance, and we always somehow were able to make it. My mother was very psychic, and she had dreams, and she had dreams sometimes, like her parents were standing in front of the church, moving their hands like that, pushing something away. And she was whispering us in the morning, strange dreams she had. And when we looked out, when dark night came, and we looked to the snow, we saw really horseshoes on the snow, a few yards from our shelter. And it could have been, if they continued a few yards, they would reach our shelter, and it might have caved in under the weight of a horse, or with a rider on it, armed. Which means that, what about food? First months, even maybe 2, we had a bag of flour, half a bag of flour and potatoes. We ate them raw because we couldn't make fire. Fire in the forest would betray us, would show the smoke, and it would be revealing our location. Which means that this is what was a way of survival. Before the snow fell in October, I could collect mushrooms. We knew which were edible. I was born there, and I knew all those things. Berries on bushes. I knew which were poisonous, which were not. And there are many leaves and vegetation in the forest which is edible. And we knew that, and it was much easier. When the snow fell, then I had to go and dig under the snow for those mushrooms and collect those berries on bushes which were sticking out of the snow. Snow was 1 to 2 feet tall, and the bushes were taller than that. After the war, I had tuberculosis. Every one of us was totally sick, hardly alive, particularly when the war was over our head for 5 times, and we didn't come out. We didn't go in and out, or we just couldn't move, because outside were soldiers fighting each other, and either one would have killed us. That we have survived it was really a miracle, and one of those big miracles. When I talk at school, I would sometimes I say, if I were a Catholic, you would look at the saint, because a miracle happened to me to stay alive. When we were robbed by Ukrainian guerrillas who were parachuted behind the enemy lines into that forest, they found us, they robbed us, stripped us. I escaped, asked partisans for help. I went to that village, took a chance, and naturally I didn't get any help. I returned back. I believe they were shooting at me, and they were they promised to shoot us. They were saying, "What's your last wish?" And my father and grandfather say, "Let's pray. Let us pray." And when he was finishing praying, he said, "Okay, My father said, okay, finish it, don't torture us here, get it over with. And my mother started shouting, no, don't kill my children, what did we do to you? We are not your enemies. And my father again, ended up, don't drag it on. And my mother again, and I escaped, ran away, they were shooting at me, and I was sure that they finished them all. And a few hours later, after being rejected by partisans, I came back to at least bury them so that the animals wouldn't eat them. And I found them alive, but standing in underwear in snow in February, 2 more months to go, very cold winter, the coldest winter of a century, by the way. And that time we were thinking, I made a lot of footsteps, the partisans made a lot of footsteps. Germans, patrols can easily follow the footsteps and find us. But luckily it started snowing, and we were afraid that those partisans would come back and finish us because they were worried about me escaping. I was witnessing. I would recognize their faces. That's why they didn't kill them. But they took all blankets, all the food we collected, even those berries, even those mushrooms, even those leaves and vegetation which we collected. And then when I returned, I found them alive, and we had a choice to make. The choice was to return to the shelter, to take a chance. It started snowing and wiped out all the footsteps, which was in our favor. We were worried that they come back and kill us. Those partisans would return and kill us. They wouldn't find us because it was a huge forest. And German patrols couldn't find us either, which means that we returned to the shelter, and the people without clothes, we would have frozen to death. I was short, everybody in my family taller. I couldn't share my 3 layers which each of us had. Those partisans were searching for gold and money, and they believed it was hidden somewhere, and they couldn't find any because we didn't have any. And we, that night when we really needed help, the area had a lot of spas with mineral water, warm mineral water, smelling like rotten eggs, like sulfur, hydrosulfide, which is in those in those healing waters, and it really disturbs the ground, and that water erupted. A tiny stream erupted on the bottom of our shelter and was flowing into that little stream, 1 foot, 2 feet, depending on how much rain or snow melting was flowing into the stream. And this was a way that saved us, because not only heating the area, but also produce some kind of a medicated anti-fungus and antibacterial chemical, but in a larger amount, or breathing it too intensely, it produces hallucinations and some kind of a trance, and it certainly helped us to survive another 2 months practically unharmed.
You said you had dreams or spiritual visions during this time?
My mother was psychic. I probably inherited some of those abilities because I was able to get messages even before as a boy, but I didn't pay any attention. I believe that everybody has the same property. I didn't debate it with anybody. There was no way to discuss such esoteric or intellectual thoughts or experiences, which means that it did not give me any motives of exchange, any views about it. I believe everybody has some intuition or some, visions and dreams, and that time it was not really very well debated, or it was just associated with some religions and mostly with Hinduism and Buddhism rather than with Christianity and Judaism, which was in that era prevalent. I had those visions which demonstrated themselves in like a debate. I didn't know if I debate with myself, but I started hearing a voice telling me what I did wrong, how I behaved wrongly before, that I felt hatred toward some people, and it was very specific which people and which situation, and warning me that this is leading to a very dangerous mindset. But I was 14 and I did not understand those sophisticated or some kind of a behavior. I was like a very uneducated, didn't go to school. Nobody was debating in those times anything intellectual. And it eventually, I considered it as my thoughts or some kind of I didn't consider it like an outside source, even if that source was telling me things which I didn't know before and which I wouldn't think of before. And after, it started immediately when I started being, because we were in that shelter in a practically darkness. We couldn't even see each other because it was like hollow stamp through which, in a dense forest, there was no light. Trees were all over, bushes all over us, which means that it was not too much sunlight. We didn't know it was a night or day. And in a situation when our mother kept the discipline, we were not allowed to raise our voice. All we could do is whisper, because anybody can walk around and discover our shelter, which means that it was practically silence and darkness. And imagine 24 hours in silence and darkness. In the middle of the night, very dark nights, not when a really high moon was outside. I went to collect those berries or mushrooms or whatever vegetation I knew it was harmless. But otherwise we were there lined up, and it was so little space there that if somebody got cramps or something, all of us had to turn around, not individually. It was not enough space to turn around individually. Which means that it was like and when that hydrosulfide arrived, it was some kind of a strange, hallucinating atmosphere. But this was only the last 2 months. Before, the air was clean and we somehow lived. So that voice was debating with me, like you have a debate among children or boys or people. The voice was crystal clear. I don't remember the language they were speaking. It was some kind of a non-verbal communication. And it was all in my head, and I couldn't share it with anybody that I hear voices. They would be laughing at me, and they would not be interested. You know, interested. Subject was surviving.
When did you eventually leave the shelter?
When
When did you leave the shelter for the final time?
There were 5 battles in the same forest all around us in April or end of March in 1945. War makes a lot of noise. We heard first of all bombardment, which is like a oh oh. When a bomb falls from an airplane, it makes one sound, a huge sound. When a cannon shoots, it makes 2 bangs. When it shoots and when it explodes, when the cartridge explodes or the bullet. Then we could start hearing machine guns, which was a ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta from a distance and closer and closer. Then we could distinguish handheld automatic weapons. Russians have those with a drum, which had hundreds of bullets in it. And then came hand grenades, mortars, and handguns. All of it we have learned under the ground. Sound goes through the ground easier. Old cowboy movies, people stuck a knife into the ground and put the knife between their teeth and could hear the galloping horses from a really distance. We all heard that under the ground because it was just a way of physics, I would say. And we learned to distinguish it, and our life depended on it. Which means that we were very careful, young people, trying to understand, like when we might finally be liberated. Then the war, first wave came from the right-hand side and moved after a terrible noise all around us, moved to the left and diminished, left. We were waiting naturally because we were not so sure. And to our disappointment and horror, from the left-hand side started again the same noise coming toward us, passing us, and ending up again somewhere where it started. This repeated itself another 3 times until the last wave ended up with total silence, and we were not really sure if it was the last one or if it was some kind of a, we didn't even know who was winning, who was losing. We were not coming out for, I don't know, days or weeks, because we didn't have any watch and we didn't know even if it was a day or night. And in that hallucinating state, not eating and to be totally disoriented, we started hearing some voices from outside saying, we know you are somewhere here. If you are alive, come out. In Slovak language. And we naturally didn't trust them because we believed that it was some kind of a DC trying to kill us, lure us out. But it was an opening where we were crawling in and out, and we pulled a tree inside so that between those branches we looked out who those people were, and my mother recognized those voices and those people as the peasants of the small, tiny village where we spent those few weeks after with those refugees or war escapees or war refugees. And when she recognized them and they were walking around, back and forth, shouting, "War is over, don't worry, you can come out if you are alive," we started crawling out of that hole. And those people, we knew them because we spent a few weeks there helping them with harvest, and we became friends. And some of them my mother knew from before, because the peasants were coming from villages to sell their products, butter, chicken, or eggs, from home to house to house. It was a county seat, and it was a hardware store there, a notary public, and court, and so on, which means that they were coming from smaller villages to do business to buy stuff in that small county seat town, 2,000 people. And this way, my mother knew them before and recognized them as people who lived in the village. And we already were sure that the war went from the right to the left and never returned, which means it made all sense, and we crawled out. And this was the first time after so many years when I saw people who were crying, looking at us. And I turned back and saw, like clay figures, because it was already April, snow was melting through the mud, which we camouflaged the shelter, and was dripping on us, and mud, and just eyes were glowing. And we looked like made of clay or fungus on us. And those people saw us. And cried, After so many years of being worried about anybody whom we met could kill us. We met them only because they had the intention to find us and kill us. This was a revelation that they are human beings who feel sorry for us. This was like for me, 14 years old, who didn't see any mercy in his life, or any love, or some kind of a outside attempt to help us. Suddenly I saw people who felt sorry for us. They brought a jar with water and had a few pieces of bread, and gave it to us, and told us if we don't follow them, we might be blown up by mines, because partisans laid mines in so that the Germans would be blown up, and Germans protected themselves with mines against the partisans who were in the forest around us. Which means that we couldn't stand up, we couldn't walk, we couldn't follow them. We ate that bread and drank some water, and I don't know how many hours later we took a branch and followed into the small village before we entered the big town where we came from. A big town was a really small town. And my mother went ahead and was hitting with a branch ground ahead of her, in case the mine would explode. It probably would either kill or hurt her, wound her. And I wanted to do it, and my mother said, no, I already lived, you didn't. No, you just stay behind. And anyway, we walked like geese, one after the other, and made it through between the minefield, and didn't get hurt. And then we washed ourselves a little in that village, and they helped us. They gave us something to because we told them that we will reward them later. They gave us some things to wear, and we made it then into, it was 4 miles, 5 miles to the town where I was born and where we lived before. And it was very strange because the town was full of soldiers, Soviet soldiers naturally, equipment, trucks. On each of those cannons pulled by trucks was written to Berlin, toward Berlin, to Berlin in Azbuka, which we knew. My mother was a teacher of French and Russian and many languages, German, Hungarian, Hebrew, whatever. And my parents were rather well educated. And now it was something I will never forget. We saw a person who was dressed in pajamas my father had under his upper clothing, which was robbed in the forest from him. He had to undress. I was not there, but he had to undress and stay there in underwear, and a person in those pajamas, which was recognizable, and he was a chief of the Soviet partisan army that took that area under his command. Now we were already washed up. We didn't look like those clay men, but we worried that if he saw us and spotted us, he might pull a gun and shoot us, because he robbed us. And they took food and clothing, believing that we might starve and freeze, and if we left the area to the village, we might have been shot by the patrols who heard the shooting and didn't expect anybody coming out to the forest. If they saw us, we'd be dead anyway. Which means that they didn't want to shoot us, but they made sure that we would not live. And this was a guy in my father's pajamas parading there, because Soviet soldiers were extremely primitive. That part was a Malinovsky army from Siberia. They were mostly criminals who were promised for each battle they received a reduced sentence and so on. Anyway, we eventually came to that town, and it was very unpleasant, because when people recognized us, they started touching us, like, how come you still alive? We must be a ghost, and they were scared of us. They just couldn't believe that we made it alive, and it was like so unpleasant that we moved out of the town, because it was just impossible to live normal lives. They looked at us as some dead ghosts, some people who came out of the grave with illogically some kind of a supernatural phenomena. But my father didn't have a chance to have a job, because only a few Jews returned, and he wanted to continue in his position as a clergyman, as a cantor rabbi, shochet, which was a kosher food supply, and so on. And my mother was a teacher. Town was very small, schools were closed, which means that we moved to another town where I then later graduated, and so on. And my brother as well, and my sister as well. And my parents were employed. And life went on.
So my project is about faith, and I'm wondering what What do you believe about God?
If you ask 100 people, who is God, what is God, you get 100 answers. Everybody would answer it in a way they were able to understand that incredibly intelligent force which rules the universe, set in motion that very sophisticated, complex system. But if people are rather simple, they would believe that God is some kind of a person or some kind of an object. And my education in this field was very different. We were told as little children that God, who created this universe, has no name because any name would pervert the meaning of that incredible creative force which made everything we could see or hear or feel. And simply Jewish religion has no name for God. Substituted with a name of Lord and this and that, but it's only substitution. We lived in a country, Christian country, which solves that problem by giving simple people an answer. They took a human being who suffered, who was executed by Roman authorities for claiming to be Messiah or to claim to be something equal to a Caesar in Rome. At least he was executed, and over his cross, he was crucified, over his cross was a sign saying his crime. Like robbers would have a robber, and murderers would have a murderer, and so on. Over his head was Jesus Nazaretus Rex Judeorum, which meant King of the Jews. King of the Jews in Roman Empire was a Caesar of Rome. It was a political crime which was punished by death, which means that his crime was political and his crime was very clearly defined on his tool of execution. He was chosen to become, first of all, son of God and equal of God, and we lived in a little town where people paraded twice or three times a year with statues of Holy Family, Saint Mary and Jesus and Saint Joseph and so on, which means that it was a great contradiction. In our Jewish religion it was saying that Abraham, since Abraham, no idols were allowed, and he became a founder of Judaism. He rejected idols, any anthropomorphic images, and Judaism is saying that anything resembling an image cannot possibly represent existence of God. Which means that I was growing up in an environment where I knew that God is much more than image of human, or we knew about, I had my 5 elementary classes and I knew about Egyptian gods, Hindu gods. History was showing us that people imagine gods in all kinds of different forms, but we did not as children understand those images, because we knew that a bull is a bull and a bird is a bird, and a human is a human and cannot possibly be creator of stars and sun and moon and things like that, and life in general, life of plants and life of fish and birds and humans and animals, which means that it was a big unknown, but we only knew that God, which our Father explained to us, wants us to be good, to be righteous, to be just, to be moral and ethical. I didn't know those terms, moral and ethical, but I knew that I should not do to anybody anything I would not expect anybody else to do to me. Which means that, and second thing from Leviticus 19, love your neighbors or love your fellow citizens or fellow humans, same as you love yourself. You don't have to love them more, you don't have to love them less, but you have to love them at least as much as you love yourself. Which means that this were our education about God. We knew what God demanded of us, and we did not have an idea how this world was created. And I am fairly old, and it's still the same puzzle or same unanswered question. We only see consequences of God's creation. We do not see God as a creator, because it's beyond our imagination.
Did your idea of God change before and after the war?
No, it absolutely didn't change. But let me insert here something very important. My father was a clergyman. He was a very religious Jew, observing all the rituals. My mother had her degree in teaching from a monastery, Catholic monastery. It was a convent. And she was looking a little bit beyond Judaism. Maybe it helped her a little, or it was just her common sense. My father, when the Holocaust, first of all, they were pioneers in the Palestine, British Mandate Palestine in 1920s, when Hitler wrote his book Mein Kampf in 1925. It was in German, they spoke German, and they read it, and they believed that Hitler is going to keep his promise. When I was kicked out of school in 1940, and my mother was standing there with a letter saying, your children cannot go to public school anymore, she said, I remember it, she said, it started already, and it is exactly what Hitler said in Mein Kampf. Which means and she meant it, and she was horrified. In 1940, it was Slovakia, and German Nazi regime started in 7 years before, 1933. Which means that it was a threat. And Hitler very clearly said in Mein Kampf that he would wipe out Jewish people to the last person. And he would also kill all the Slavic people, and he would also kill all the people who were not white, old colored people, and so on, which means that he said that German race, he said, would repopulate the planet, and first thing he would do, wipe out Poland, the population of Poland and Russia, because this is where he was expanding Germany. And the war has proven that this was his intention. My mother understood it, my father understood it. But how did they approach this problem? Through God. My father said, if it is God's intention to allow this, let's become martyrs, let's go and die, and God has a purpose, and God has a plan, and it must serve some purpose, and let's not resist, let's do whatever uh, we are told to do, and trusting God that it is a meaning to it. And my mother opposed him. My mother said, hold it, God is not planning to kill us. Who is trying to kill us is Hitler and Tito. Tito was the president of Slovak, fascist Slovak Republic. Those two people want to kill us, rob us, kill us. It's not God. God gave us intelligence. God gave us muscles. God gave us mind. God gave us ability to resist, to defend ourselves. We are going to fight those people who try to kill us, and God will help us to do that. And she called her 3 children, and it was 1942 when it was crystal clear what they are planning with us. We just didn't know how. But my mother knew that they are going to kill us. It was no doubt about it. I'm alive because of her awareness. And she said, we have 2 choices, my dear children, 3 children. We can take a poison and die at our choice. This is our decision. Or we can fight against all odds, because around Slovakia, thousands of miles in all directions are German, and SS and Gestapo, and they will trace us, find us and kill us anyway. Should we try against all odds to survive or not? We 3 children looked at each other, and without hesitation we said, now let's go and fight. Even if they drag us to the railroad station, force us to walk into the cattle cars, we would refuse it and let's be shot on the spot. And this was a decision, unanimous, no doubts or no hesitations in it. And my brother started immediately thinking of the shelter in the forest, because we lived practically in the forest. This was the town we lived in, a tiny town. We called it town, here it would be called a village, 2,000 people. It was a you know, to resist at that time was to resist all governments of Europe, all police in Europe, all soldiers in Europe, all secret police in Europe, all anti-Semites or people who would denounce a Jew if they saw somebody with false papers. They would say, oh, they would just accuse, they would just report it to authorities. The chance to survive at that time was nil, absolutely nil. And we decided, as I was 12, my sister 10, my brother 14, no, 12, 14, we decided to fight regardless of common sense, regardless of anything. And the rare opportunity or rare case, we made it alive. It was not easy, but without this determination, it would have never happened. And I can say that my mother was right, and God helped us to survive by giving us the intelligence, the mind, to outsmart and outfit our enemies, who had a very clear objective to just see us dead, so that their particular race will dominate the world and replace all the other people with some tribes which they prefer to rule the world. They called it master race, and the rest of the world would be slaves or dead bodies. And they managed to kill about 70 million people, even if 10% of it were Germans themselves. 7 million Germans died, and the rest were murdered, more or less murdered people.
One question I ask people is, what's your earliest memory of faith in your life?
You know, it is very strange for me to use the word faith, because since early childhood we were raised of not to trust without proof anything we see, hear, words or images, or to just to go deep inside and to search for the essence of it, for the motivation of it. If somebody was telling us something, we were searching subconsciously, why is he telling us this? Which means that faith was something you would trust. Unfortunately, since I remember, I was unable to trust anything I heard from outside, because it was pure, sophisticated propaganda made to weaken us, to bluff, to make people believe that we were poisoning the wells. Nobody died of any poisoning ever, particularly in the mountains. You know, snow was melting. And people believe that we are poisoning the water. And nobody died. And people believe that they said that we put the blood of children into matzah or whatever. No child was missing ever for that purpose or any other purpose. And they still believe that we were doing it. They called us criminals. They called us rats and insects and poisons and spreading epidemics and diseases and making wars. How could a 10 years old make wars? I was accused of making wars, which means that this was an outside world we lived in. To trust any word was very difficult. My father was a clergyman, as I repeated. I saw a lot of people who were very religious, considering rituals. They kept all the rituals. And they were people who were stealing or cheating. And to be a son of a clergyman is a different, you have a different view, because we went with our father a few times a week to the synagogue to pray. I still pray every morning. I put my tefillin on, which is a phylactery, for those who don't know the word tefillin. And I connect to the Creator. I don't know where, how, and resides, but I know that to create life is more complicated than 14.5 billion years. This universe is old, which means that it took more to create life than our universe, which means that must have been universes before this one, and must be more than one universe, and must be more dimensions. Our eye can see only 1% of visual light. So many things are happening in 99. I was lucky that somehow my body or mind or whatever was granted to see much more. Many of my inventions came from nowhere. I knew in the morning what I was thinking of at night. If I fell asleep in the morning, I had a solution. And I would become a successful inventor, successful scientist, successful this and that. And the same thing with art. I had never been an artist by profession. Then I became an artist and made it in the book of art history, where I was praised to invent new way of completing Impressionists' incomplete development. because Picasso came, Cubism came and stole from them a completion of their movement, artistic movement. Where did I get it from? It must have come from somewhere I had no control over. I didn't have education in, which means that there are things in those 99% my eye cannot perceive, or my mind cannot perceive, or dogs have better hearing than I do. They can probably have 2-3% of sound recognition than humans. Bats have a radar built in. We don't. Which means that it's a huge number of dimensions all around us. I don't know how many units of some kind of entities are sitting in this room with us. Because I cannot see them, I can only guess them, and I cannot prove anything, because they are not made of this material we are made of. And as a chemist, I know that what is a density of material. Solids are much denser than liquids, or gases, or plasma, or then it goes even further. Glass is one of those odd things, which is a compromise, some kind of a combination of liquids and solids. I was able to get good education during my studies in chemistry and physics to understand that there are a lot of forms of intelligent projections or entities which we are unable to perceive. And I spent quite a few years of my life to study it. It's called esoteric, mystical, this and that. It's nothing like that. It is a reality which we cannot see. And by being ignorant, we give it all kinds of names. But it can be studied, and it can be discovered and can be defined. Which means that I did my best. I was able to give a lot of lectures on this subject. And people praised me or thanked me for improving their lives, because this was my intention.
You believe your idea is that there is a God, but it's not something understandable.
It is a God, and it is understandable through creation, through consequences. You can see consequences of creation. You can see the creation, but to see creator, you can only somehow extrapolate some kind. You can only guess. If I see a sculpture, I might think of a sculptor who carved it. But if I didn't see him and I don't know him, how would I define that person? And imagine creating galaxies, creating dimensions, black holes, which can swallow everything and then explode again, shrink everything and expand. I read, and I spent a whole day in Tzefat. It's a in North Israel, of a mystic called Yitzhak Luria. I spent many hours on his grave. 500 years ago, he already described these shrinking and expanding universes. Where did he get it from? I don't know, but every scientist in 21st century would not argue with it. It's a fact, and it's measurable that each planet or each star, distances between stars are increasing. And I don't know how far it has to go to be swallowed by the black hole again into some, which is, and we know at the moment that for 6.5 billion years ago, it happened to our universe. But we also know that life as a such is too sophisticated, too complex to be invented in this time with a super computer, which means that it's so complex that it cannot be even explained, not only interpreted or copied, or we can only manipulate it, but we are not able to explain, to produce new life.
What would
on
you
the
say?
other hand, in 200 years we might.
What do you feel is the first time in your life you had to rely upon God as you understand God?
You know, I had an exhibition exactly 20 years ago in Bratislava. President of the country came there, American ambassador with his staff came there, and the cream of Slovak culture that came there. And it was a filmmaker who came with us to Bratislava. And after the exhibition was opened and she saw the whole thing, filmed everything, she came to me outside, pointed the camera at me and said, how you feel talk to presidents and ambassadors of huge countries and the cream of the society, best poet of the country, your friend, and so. How you feel? Doesn't it excite you or some kind of? Because she didn't see me excited or even noticing some difference from my regular life. And I told them, you know what? I talk to God every morning. What president of some country would do to me? Like who is he that I would be excited about? I'm in contact with something or somebody, but creator of this universe or the system of this is too far. I might be in contact with something which is lesser than God. There might be beings which are in good agreement with the intentions or with the system or with the information or whatever to call it, but it is not the source itself, but it's connected directly to it. I don't know how, but I feel it. And this is what I learned since childhood, to have some connection with something, somebody much bigger than all of us and all, even that solar system or galaxy which we live in, and how to stay alive after understanding it. It's a great achievement, because I have never felt excited or simply privileged or rewarded with some extra perceptions or extra abilities. And I have chosen a regular life of a human being, except in early childhood I was told, if you want to live long and happy, get rid of your ego. Don't work for fame. Don't work for money. Don't work for wealth. Don't work for privileges. Remain a simple, as I call myself, a peasant boy from a small mountain village, and remain a regular human being. Don't get excited or don't get like I don't know how to say it, crushed by something bigger than you are.
Tell me about a time you doubted your faith.
It was nothing to doubt. You know, I knew, for example, a lot of people are depressed now that Putin is trying to restore Soviet Union. What should I doubt that he is trying to restore former glory of his country or his own glory and so on? You see that somebody invented a car and you are sitting on it. Should you doubt that somebody invented a car and you sit on it and drive? You know, I don't know, I don't even know meaning of the question. How can I doubt force that produced such an incredible sophistication, such an incredible system, produced life? How can I doubt it? It's here. It is, the evidence is every second, every breath I take. I don't know what's after I would breathe, stop breathing. I don't know how far. I don't know the process, but I can look around and find out what happened to people before me, and assume what will happen to me and to other people. But you know, I tell you where this question comes from. People believe that God is a business person. I give God some rituals and God will reward me with this and that. If God doesn't reward them, they feel disappointed. I was never promised that God or some divine forces will privilege me and reward me for being humane or good or righteous or pretty or nice or whatever. I was never promised anything like that. Judaism is not saying anything like that. Other religions might have said that, but my religion never promised privileges to the loyal and the faithful. If you look at, for example, Christianity, which is all around us, loyalty is rewarded. Loyalty to church is rewarded by eternal life. You can be a criminal, but if you are loyal to the church, you go to heaven. Which means that where is common sense, where is morals, ethics, justice? Nowhere. Vanished through political powers of a certain organization who is promising you, by the way, empty phrase, promising you some rewards for loyalty. But they have no control over that promise. They promise you eternal life. What is eternal life? By the way, everybody is eternal life because it is in those 99% we don't perceive, it is something in life which is not only biological, and that something is not dying, that something continues in different forms and shapes. And this is what I learned even from that voice. Or from that education I was receiving in really conditions of distress or very high tension and very long time of being in silence and darkness. Just to compare it to, if you look at the highest achievements of Sufis or monks or mystics or some esoteric people, some yogis, dervishes, shamans, They had a 40 days of deprivation of life or biological functions to achieve a level of understanding. And if they exceeded it, even Moses on the hill, 40 days. It's a 40 days is a probably biologically, a limit to understand things beyond our senses. And I had to go 5 times longer. It was really something bordering miracles or a miracle, or something like beyond ability. It had to be, I had to be conditioned differently, and I would say since my childhood I heard that those suggestions, how to think, how to work, how to behave, where is danger of a biological existence, what is rules, biological rules compared to moral, ethical, justice rules, because they contradict biological life. Biological life is that the stronger is the weaker. If you look at, I was 10 years old when they kicked me out of school, and I was watching trout. I was standing over the creek. I was not allowed to fish because it was sport, and sports for Jews was totally forbidden. But I was standing there watching the trout, and I saw the trout catching small minnows. They might have been, that little minnow might have been his son or daughter. And he swallowed it anyway. He didn't have time to think of it because he was hungry and he would die if he didn't eat. Which means that, I was 10 years old and watching it and was really thinking. And then I looked at Nazis, what they did, and I read the rules of the Nazis. You are either the hammer or the thing you are hitting. You better be a hammer if you want to, which means that if you, Mein Kampf is saying, if you see a pretty woman and he's somebody's wife, doesn't matter, take her. If he is weak and doesn't defend her, it's yours. Which means that this was totally opposite of morals, ethics, justice, or any ideas of my religion.
Wow.
No, it went from here to here. This was, when I was doing, I believe I have a pneumonia or something. Within 10-15 minutes, I was healed by one beer.
Wow.
I wanted you to remember it. I healed so many people with Czech beer. People came, telling me on Monday I'm in a hospital to be, submerged and
Right.
that shock and ultrasonic and so on. I told him I healed you, don't worry. Drink 6 beers. Go to Target and buy Urquell Czech beer. 2 days later he came, I went to the doctor. He said, where are your stones? They took an X-ray and stones were gone. Which means that before I forget, because this is a very good...
That's great.
Very few people know chemistry of beer.
So I want to ask you,
Yes.
What do you feel was the message you received in the shelter? When you said you felt like you were having dreams or hallucinating, what do you feel was the mystical message that you received?
It was nothing mystical on it, because mystical you call things you don't understand. And I understood it very clearly. First of all, first part of the message was what I did wrong as a child. First of all, they said you hate it. Absolutely eliminate hate from your life. Hate is poison. Poisons you. Punish yourself for criminality or rotten things done to you. You never feel depressed. Depression is exactly what your enemies want you to do, want to be. Eliminate any ego, because then you are tied to a objective which is different from your well-being. You are a slave of some desires, a slave of some either biological pleasures or some benefits you can get or power you can have and so on. Which means that 200 days is too long. And it was an exercise which took a while, because I was 14, 15. Which means that, first of all, it purified me, my nature, my character, until I lost all the negative thinking, negative emotions, negative approach, and dissociating myself from my biological life. But to be exact, I have to add that I was strong as a bull. I had very strong muscles. I was very flexible, resistant to diseases because I never cared, which means that I was immune to anything else. My brother was ill many times. Anybody around me was ill. I was never ill, and if I was, I just in few days recovered because my immune system became so strong. I never exaggerated hygiene. I was told that too, because this kills your immunity. I don't know if they called it immunity because I didn't know too much about medicine or immunity. But this is, I would say, the first 1/3 of the education, or whatever it was to prepare me for tough life. And prepare me for tough life unharmed, so that the tough life would not harm me. And I don't know why and who and what caused this education. How come my brother didn't have it? He wanted to become an artist. He was fighting for artistic freedom of artists in a communist country, and it cost him his life. They tried to eliminate him, as they did. And there are two people who are using that desk where they inserted that radioactive stuff and then removed 3 months later. Both of them died exactly the same way, got sick the same way, died the same way, and it was no doubt that. And then during the Dubček period, I found out that it was a way of getting rid of some people who were not supposed to be exposed, that they committed a crime or something, because they claimed that the best freedom of art is in Soviet Union, and the best freedom of expression and media is in Soviet Union, and so on. Which means that it was it was a deceit somehow. I knew how. I was warning him. I was 2 years younger, much less education than him. I was warning him of consequences because I was aware what they would do to him. I don't know how I did it, how I knew it. Which means that a lot of traps I could have fell into, I saw ahead of time and avoided it. It's like if the hole underneath here, I would go around it and I would not step on it for some reason, of feeling that it's something there which is dangerous. And this was the second part of that education. And the third part was just get education, find out where you landed, and look around and help people and remain a human being. Do not try to show off or benefit from it, because this will cancel all your. I was called to de-exercise the land. Should I tell you the story? I don't know if it fits this. They found that I was giving lectures on esoteric subjects, on Kabbalah. I can even show you those posters I made, because it was before digital age. And I have them in a computer. They knew that I was something, I was able to do or know things they wanted to use. It was a guy who said 250 years ago, or 240 or something, because it happened about 10 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago. A guy came here, put a lot of books on the table, historic books. He was a professor of history, saying it was in Iowa, some kind of a guy who was searching for Indian gold. And he found a lot of it, hidden in mountains and whatever. And he came here to search for gold the traitor received before Kingston was burned by British. British paid him, it was a wooden box, and he, when Americans started winning the revolution, he took a horse and buggy to the mountains. He had a black slave with him. They buried that box in the ground. They killed him. They killed the black guy, pushed him into the grave and filled it up. Americans won, and he never returned to pick up his box, or he was killed over time, because British paid him. And he brought me books about, what happened. And he said, that prospector came with horses, workers, and started digging in a place here in the mountains, trying to dig out. But horses became crazy, dogs started barking. It was some kind of a curse, because he killed that black guy, and it was a cursed piece of land, and all workers started vomiting and being sick, and he gave up. He came to that professor of history and said, I'm giving up, I'm rich enough, I don't need this. Here it is, do whatever you want with it, here is a location, and leave me alone, it's all yours. And he came to me saying, this is a curse. It's a Christian curse. For you, a Jew, it's nothing. You can do it. You can exorcise the land so I can dig it out, and help me in doing it. And I reward you. I said, if I get one dime from you, I lose all the powers that I might have. Anyway, he took me there, and first of all, he took me he had a little dog, and the dog was barking like crazy, it was totally mad, and he got sick in the stomach, but he was close enough to show me where it was. I went into very old books. I found out how to exercise the land, but I simplified it because he told me that it's not as powerful curses, which means that I put the tefillin and talis on. I got about 10 prayers. With a rope, I put a rope around that area. It was like maybe a foot of mud there. It was next to a ravine, and by the way, I had to learn first dowsing, because metal detectors would not go deep enough. I learned the dowsing, and I was proving that it's something there. And training in dowsing was distinguished copper, silver, and gold, and it was showing gold. Anyway, he was sitting opposite hill with his dog and Noemi, and they were watching me doing it. Took me about 2 hours. And when I finished it, I removed the ropes and said, that's all I could do. I saw some flash in the air, but that's all I can tell you. If it's done or not, I don't know. But this is what you required from me, and don't give me even a dime, because I love myself and I don't want to benefit from it. He went there with a dog. The dog was running around, peacefully. He didn't get sick, and he lived here for about 6 months. Bought a house, and then he vanished, remarried or something, which means that I don't know what happened to him. I didn't follow him. But this was my reputation here after giving lectures on esoteric subjects. I gave a lecture which took 14 hours, 7 lectures, 2 hours each, with big posters, my size, I called it, because it was all around the room, and about 30, 40 people in the room. And then I got my job back. It was in the digital, Koreans purchased the company, and they rehired me. During the time between two same job, but between 2 companies, I was doing things like that.
But this is how do these? Would you consider yourself a healer?
Yes, I can do things like that, but not call it anything. A lot of people come for a hug, and they feel great after the hug, and they say, "What happened?" But during the war, to survive, that interregnum, that period in 1943, Germans started losing the war, and Slovak fascists started thinking it over, switching loyalties. And they stopped deportations, and there were about 12,000 Jews still in the country. A year later, they killed most of them. Even 1,000 people were killed by Slovaks, thrown into a furnace, into calcium, making gypsum, calcium, burning limestone, anyway, and the rest were shipped into camps and whatever. What was I saying?
You were saying we were talking about you being a healer, and about
Yes.
in 1943.
Yes, which means that my father invented something, it was a chiropractor who irritated the medical doctors because he was healing people by fixing joints. And my father was very intelligent and extremely, attentive. And he was watching him, like crippled people came there, and they walked out. And he said that it was a Jewish guy, Klein was his name. He said, it would be a revolution if I leave. If they take me, people would come here and demonstrate it. They would never take me, So they came at night, shipped him, killed him. And it was nobody there that kind of service anymore, because medical doctors couldn't do it, and chiropractic, what was called now chiropractic, was totally illegal to practice, because there were no schools for it, and it was a medical profession, and the doctors hated it because it took from them, that didn't have any license. Anyway, to survive somehow that period in between, that embarrassment, and they started, Russians started, or Soviets started pushing to the west, and it was obvious on the map that it's not going to end up very well, which means that deportation stopped, and we had nothing to eat, we had no employment, no people, nobody paid anything, which means that my father got an idea to try to replicate what he learned from that chiropractor who was killed a year before. And he took me with him. I had a hat, no star. I covered it up, my father too. Nobody could recognize us really, because everything was like half a face was visible. And we came to a village saying, do you have a goat or a sheep or a cow or a horse? Horses were small horses. Genghis Khan left in Europe in those mountains 600 years before. And hair was hanging from their bellies. And they were very strong horses, they ate almost nothing, or they ate whatever was there. And were pulling those logs downhill into the valleys but sometimes they slipped and so on, and once an animal got hurt or dislocated joints, they shot him or killed him with an axe. They killed him for meat or skin or whatever. And my father came and told them, if you have an animal like that, we can fix it, don't kill it. We can fix broken bones, we can fix dislocated joints. And we started doing it, and we got a few eggs, and we got a little piece of butter, bread or stuff. And with week after week, and then reputation spread, and people came saying, if you can fix a goat, can you fix me? My shoulder, a log fell on me, and I cannot. And my father said, yeah, I get arrested. And they said, okay, we swear to our mother's life and so on, that to our children, that we would not tell anybody. Naturally, and when we fix a person, we got a chicken. Chicken was 2 weeks of life. And this way, we became eventually healers. Maybe it was something in it more than physical movements, but anyway, people loved it, and nothing happened. My father was never arrested, and we survived a very difficult year, 1943, and this helped a lot. Now, when I hug somebody, all the knowledge is in it, including that esoteric kind of, I feel where the person has a problem. And people say, what happened? And I feel terribly good, what did you do? And I am laughing and telling them nothing. Which means that, there are things, like Shakespeare said, between heaven and earth we have no idea about. And it's not very safe to even talk about it. And now it is safe, because now anything goes.
Right. But
there used to be times where they would even put you on some kind of a list of people, candidates for mental disease or mental
so you consider
illness.
Yourself a healer today?
Yeah. Because they would say that you have some powers which might conflict with some government or with authorities, with medical science or this and that. and I lock you up, I eliminate you.
Right.
And I didn't do that mistake ever. Because I was told to play low, to not to have ego, not to benefit from it.
How do you help people today? How do you help people heal today?
I heal people by giving lectures. I have a pile of letters saying, from school children mostly, before COVID 2019, I gave 26 lectures a year. Now I give it on Zoom. In April, 2 lectures for Purdue University, 1 for teachers, 1 for students on Zoom. In September we go to California personally, speak to veterans, 1 hour lecture. Most things I was spoken is high schools, depending what level they tell me. If it is 14 to 18, it's the best way because kids already know a little bit of life. But it's no problem of any age because I talk to people who were 6, 7 years old, and you wouldn't believe it, when they are 30 they come back and kiss me, hug me, and saying, "You changed my life."
Wow.
And this is a vow, because this is it's worth living like that. I have a lot of letters from different areas, different people, even different countries, because in Europe I gave a lot of those lectures. And they tell me practically the same, and I can shorten it into a few sentences. They are saying, when my mother got breast cancer, I believed that the world ended. When my father ran away from us, I believed that the end of the world, catastrophe. When my sister got pregnant, I believed that like nothing we can do, that's it, And when I listened to you for 40 minutes, because school hours are 40 minutes, I feel how silly I was to be depressed or to be sad or to be... Because, after my lectures in high schools, there are 2 lines develop. 1 line is asking questions, and 1 line is to hug. They line up kids, girls, boys, doesn't matter, even, and then even teachers. They come for a hug because they feel something. And this is how I can show them the level of reasons for suffering which I overcame without suffering, with refusing to suffer, refusing to sit on the floor. I call it, don't cry over the spilled milk, bring a cat. This is what they remember. After years I meet them, grandparents come with the kids saying, when I was a child, I listened to you, it changed my life. When my son grew up, or daughter grew up, 12, 13 years old, I let them listen to you. Now I have a grandchild, can you talk to her or to him? And this is a reward for what I'm doing, because it completely changes perception of life. Most people really are unhappy, comparing themselves with somebody else, competing, all the time with themselves or with the others. Every little obstacle is for them a catastrophe. And here they see a person who spends 3 years running from being killed, who is hugging them and loving them. You cannot hide if you love somebody, which means that it is something which is beyond biological. And
is this God?
Everything is God. Problem is that it goes very slowly. Abraham lived 3,800 years ago, and he is known as a initiator of an idea of kindness. Kindness is more important to be kind than to be right. It is more important to cooperate than to compete. It's more important to love than to hate. It's more important to help than rob. Which means that it is opposite to biological laws. And it came from God. It even claims, the history of that religion or that faith is based on God, based on some, it might not be God himself, but some lieutenants of God. Those UFOs, some people call them gods, because UFOs are some intelligent, more advanced civilizations and so on. And some people believe that they are God messengers. No, they use all the creation advantages technologically and whatever communication-wise that are hidden from us. We didn't reach yet that level. We will reach that level if Putin let us live. If he wouldn't start nuclear weapons, using nuclear weapons as he promised so far twice, very seriously, and so far whatever he did, he fulfilled, like Hitler. Which means that let's see if he fulfills this one. But if he is pushed into the corner, I don't see any good reason why he wouldn't use it. But now they have smaller sizes. Now he would destroy probably Kingston, but he would not destroy New York City completely. It would be just a district or something, because they managed to make smaller cartridges and smaller those explosives. You can put it in a cannon. They don't have to drop it from airplanes or do some kind of rockets and so.
You talked about that the hug, it comes from God or from love and is different than the biological law.
It's all one package. It's all one package. There are no two creations. It's one creation, and it is a different development technically and emotionally and rationally. Which means that, and I would say even politically, because politics means that we arrange our society the best we can, and we are not united in our purpose. Everybody wants to be dominating the others, and this is where the problem is. If they cannot do it by some kind of a understanding, mutual division of loot or resources, then comes violence, and it solves the problem, because the weak ones get robbed, and the stronger ones become the looters and get it. And we see it. It was all the wars. I remember myself. If you look at all genocides since I was alive, including I was not alive in Armenian one, 1915. But it was just a plain robbery. They killed about 1.5 million Christians. Muslims killed them because they were Christians, but they didn't kill them because Muslims killed Christians. They killed them because they had property. They were smart businessmen, and they just killed them and took their property. The Holocaust could be renamed to armed robbery. It's nothing there ideologically, politically, and so on, except the robbery, plain robbery, competition. My family would survive, and your family will die, and I take your property.
Do you think this will ever stop with humanity?
if it doesn't stop, humanity would destroy itself, because simultaneously with power and with time grows technology. Germans fooled the world by having equipment. Siemens built crematoria. Some chemist invented Zyklon B, which was some kind of a cyanide in a crystal form, and which exposed cyanide as a gas. And gas chambers were able to be sealed. To seal something is very difficult, and technology allows it. Germans were the most intelligent people in literature, in music, in technology, in manufacturing, in science, and so on. Which means that they used all those advantages to kill people. Which means that you see that the best way to explain it is if that humanity and intelligence and emotional part of the development is not in good agreement with technology, then just few people can destroy the world through technology. Putin at the moment is surrounded by people who are scared, terribly scared of him. He is a total dictator. He used to have about 25 advisors. You know how many he has now? 3. And he is sitting here, and about 20 feet from him is the next person. He's afraid to be shot. Which means that it is a person like that who has been in isolation for 2 years. You know what isolation does to people, paranoid. And he is in charge of very dangerous weapons. He has 6,000 pieces of nuclear weapons. And he can use it.
You said when I came in today,
What?
when you and I were talking, that only 8% of human history had no war.
That's correct. 8% in few thousand years, which means that it's a nice statistics. But it might be. We live now for about 70 years in relative peace, but it was Rwanda, Burundi, 100,000 people chopped by machetes. Ethiopia, Eritrea war, Vietnam war, Korean war. There were wars in South America, several one of those uprisings. They were wars going on, but this country didn't feel them as badly, except those 3 wars. I gave a lecture here in Best Western, across the street, to nationwide convention of veterans. They were people who survived Pearl Harbor. He was 2 weeks from being 100 years old, sitting around having a dinner, Anyway, I gave them an hour lecture, and ever since I'm invited to all those actions. And I tell you what happened. I gave that lecture, slideshow lecture, and to my shock, all those generals and all those soldiers and heroes stood up and started applauding and said, "We had weapons, we had tanks, we had airplanes, we had food, we were dressed in uniforms. A big country was behind us. We were protected by all kinds of international this and that. And what did you have?" all surrounded by those who wanted to kill us, and you made it. You are the heroes, not us. You are the real hero. You have done something which was totally impossible to survive and to fight, and you did that. And they invited me to speak, the guest speaker to California in September 23 or 25 I would speak. But it will be a few days of convention. Which means that you see, it is, people are not as ignorant. A lot of people understood that it was not a joke and it was not some kind of, but I don't believe that I was chosen for something like that. But I can tell you that speaking to people at the moment is more important for me than go and hug somebody or something like that. The message is very strong. First of all, do not fear at all. Fear, if you are fearful, you just do whatever your enemy wants you to do. You feel what they wanted to, through propaganda or through threats, make you weaker. And never give up, and keep your standards, keep your humanity, and don't compromise. But fight for survival. Don't hit your head over. Don't try to break the wall with your head. And my personal experience is shrunk into one sentence. It is a song probably invented or composed in the First World War. Praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. Jews lost in the Second World War mostly, and German psychologists figured it out and used it to their advantage. Terrible allergy, adversity to violence. Jews are not hunters because, if you shoot a deer, it's not kosher because you killed it. It has to be put to sleep very slowly by draining of blood, by very sharp instruments they don't feel, and cutting the nerves, nerve cells, centers, which means that it is some kind of a aversity or some kind of a inexperience in violence. I believe, and my experience is, that violence is part of survival. And if you do not protect yourself by using violence, if in defense of your life or defense of innocent people, you are contributing to a crime committed over those innocent people. Which means that I am not against violence. I am against bad wars and good wars. I am against bad wars, but do not condemn or blame defensive wars as violence. I don't call them violence. I am calling them a response to violence. I openly tell everybody that I'm armed. Don't try to do anything to me because you might not end up very healthy after that. I would not hesitate to use anything available in a modern society to defend myself, and to put over a school a big sign saying, "This is a gun-free zone," invites a person with a gun to go there because it's the safest place for him to kill. Which means that this is what I see in our society as a contradiction, or some kind of a, I would call it rather freely total stupidity, illogical thing, inviting criminals to be free because nobody would resist them, nobody would object them. Which means that this is what I never ever, that mistake I never did. And this is one of those things I parted with my fellow Jews who just would not use physical violence against to stay alive. And they lost. They didn't lose, but they had terrible casualties. They won eventually. State of Israel was created a little bit faster than expected. It would have been created anyway. But casualties were too high, to be able to kill half of the population of Europe. Jewish population of Europe was incredible. No other ethnic group or nation would have survived such. And Jews just shook up their shoulders and were even more creative as ever before. But they learned a lesson, and Israel is not waiting until it's wiped out. Yeah. Israel is armed. The scientists have produced weapons and intelligence and information systems and cyber weapons and cyber counter attacks to an extent that combined with humanity, combined with ideals of peace, they became peacemakers even in the war between Russians and Ukrainians at the moment. Bennett visited Moscow, then visited Germany, and he was allowed by rabbis to do it on Saturday because Saturday is a day of rest and Jews are not allowed to travel. And they allowed Prime Minister to travel because it was a peacemaking mission. Anyway, this is, I believe, very essential correction of history, and that's why I am very hopeful, very hopeful that this word will be saved and it will not be wiped out as logically any rational person would predict. I'm grateful not to be born as a branch of a tree. I'm very grateful not to be born as an ant. Imagine an ant looking at a skyscraper in New York. How could he understand? He believes that on the penthouse God lives in a penthouse because it has no capacity to go any further. Which means that to have a capacity to use my senses, my mind, and my intuition, and what I told you, 99% of beyond my ability to feel, see, hear, taste, to go beyond what we have received is an incredible gift. And I'm very grateful that I was born as a Jew because this is a very specific little ethnic group. There are 640 other people on this planet to one Jew. 1 to 640. It's an incredible number. And have a look at Einstein, Jesus, Marx, Freud, all those giants, Abraham. Simply you cannot, Bible, even if it was a Jewish Bible, it would not be Christianity and Islam. 7 prophets of Islam, 6 of them are either from the Jewish Bible or are Jewish. Muhammad was not Jewish, but all the others are either from Adam and Eve are not Jewish. Adam is one of those prophets. He was not Jewish, but he came from a Jewish Bible which picked up a first person just to prove that they were our ancestors and nobody else. Nobody can claim privileges. We all came from the same source. We are all equal because we came from the same grandparents. Your great parents. Which means that it is so smartly written, sieved through history, corrected and double corrected, until it has produced a Ten Commandments. And what is really very badly overlooked, because Catechism didn't say that in translation, but original say it. First commandment is saying, I am your God. This might be the very important answer. I am your God who freed you from slavery, they say in Egypt. Which means that God presented his business card. This is who I am. In the first commandment. He didn't say, I'm your God because I gave you hands and mind and eyes to see and food to eat and so on. I'm your God who made you free. Without freedom, there is no value to intellect, to physical results of physical activities. Nothing is worthwhile if you are a slave, if you do what somebody else is telling you to do. Freedom makes it. And Jews are a group who published the will of their God and presented him as who gave them freedom. And this doesn't mean only physical freedom, it means mental freedom. That's why Jews are absolutely outstanding, little tiny group, 1 to 640, compared to any other ethnic group. Because, you know, Indians are 1,300 million, Chinese are 1,500 million. They are very smart, a lot of people, you know, a lot of beautiful ideologies and this and that. But nobody concentrated the essence of the goal, of the objectives of humankind, of the ideal objectives of humankind, as well as this particular tiny nation, ethnic group that it's turned nation into nation again, or religion, doesn't matter, because Judaism is not only religion, far from it. It's not only nationality, it's not only ideology, it's not only philosophy. It's a civilization, it's a conglomerate of ideas which lead to improvement of humans. And regardless that it's rejected at such a small number, it made incredible impact into the world, and changing the world even as we speak.
Yeah. Do you have a message?
I have a message, you know. Be strong, remain healthy, be good, prefer to be kind rather than to be right, don't compete, cooperate, live in peace, but do not hesitate to fight people who are violent, unjust, and just cruel, and try to dominate over everybody, including you. Do not hesitate to resist, but if you can do it through peaceful means, prefer peaceful means. But if not, do not hesitate to use whatever is necessary to introduce introduce justice, morals, ethics, principles of fairness, equality, and first, before anything else, to retain freedom of mind, freedom of inventions, freedom of creation, be creative, and freedom of life, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. Because without that, slave society never ever produced two great civilizations. We're talking about democracy. The word democracy came from Greece, from ancient Greece. There were about 3% of free people, those upper hierarchies, and about 97% of slaves. And talking about them, and because Greece is made of islands, many islands, they had some kind of a cooperation of being protected from Mediterranean pirates and bandits and intruders. And they had some kind of a voting, those 3% had some kind of a voting system among themselves to cooperate in defense. And we call it democracy. But the democracy had 97% of slaves, which means that even that is a fiction. And Bible corrected all of it. And it's proven it is 1200 years of nationhood on a specific territory, and 3,800 years since Abraham, or 3,300 years since Moses, which means that it is a worthwhile look into the Bible and read it with rational mind and loving heart, because this is what it deserves. And this is how I raised up, and this is how I saved my life, and this is how I still keep smiling in my old age. And I believe that people deserve to follow that.
My last question, I'm going to make a picture of you now, and when people see your picture, what do you want them to know about you?
A picture just would identify me, telling you things which I didn't invent. I just learned them, I heard them, either as an inner voice or outside voice or education. And my picture is, to me, totally insignificant, but that picture is an image of this second. And this second in billions years of of this universe is simply insignificant. And I don't believe that I am significant. I'm one of many products of the Creator, and if I'm able to speak, it is a consequence of who knows what and how. And all my contribution is that I try to stay alive in a rather turbulent life which I had.
Yeah. Tibor, thank you so much.
I thank you for coming, and maybe somebody would see it and recognize me and say, Tibor, I have a question. And I would be pleased if they did. And I have it, I can walk around and I go to all kinds of communities. There are here Christian communities of refugees. 500 years ago, Catholics were killing Protestants in Europe. And they are here groups, thousands of them. In Newport are Huguenots, but these are Bruderhof, it's called. We were on Sunday afternoon, not yesterday, it was a week ago. And we socialized with them for decades. And there are all kinds of people who come to learn or to participate or to come to learn something, and it is like the best reward I could get. because the worst thing is to speak into the wind.